conversation with the new, and I want to say new because certainly he's not been around for a long time. We're talking about something close to slightly over 6 months. The Ambassador Liberat Mfumukeko, who is the East African Community Secretary General. He ascended to this position in March of this year, and so by and large he's trying to really find his footing with regard to superintending over what is our regional political economic block. And so this morning we're going to have a conversation around the East African community, what are the priority areas going forward, but also importantly what he as an individual brings on board, what is his vision and what he intends to achieve when his tenure finally comes to a close. We'll be right back to have this conversation more with him when we take this breather. Ambassador Liberat Mfumukeko. Mfumukeko.
Yes.
I hope I can get the names better with more practice. Yeah. Good morning, welcome to the show.
Good morning.
New Secretary General of the East African Community, you bring with you a wealth of experience having worked in Burundi and being Burundian yourself. You are working in Burundi as the Chief Executive for their water and electricity utility company. So you come in with a heart of development, a heart of integration and a bit of some economy to yourself. By and large, if you just start from a starting point, what is the state of the East African Community Secretariat as you found it, and how do you intend to superintend over it? You?
Well, the East African community is, as you know, is involved in so many activities. There are different divisions and departments and directorates. So we are actually acting in practically all the sectors. So EAC has achieved a lot. I'm sure you know about the publication of the African Union early this year. The African Union, together with the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, who actually ranked the East African community as being the most performing and the most integrated bloc in Africa. So a lot is being done there. It is not perfect, but we just turn out to be really very, very dynamic.
That is a good state of affairs to inherit.
Yes.
Many times new leaders find a broken house and all they do is spend much of their early years fixing leaking roofs and all that. You have found a clean slate, so to speak. Like you said, it's not perfect, but it's certainly very good. So what are you doing to carry on this? What do you intend to be that legacy that you put in place? Or if I put it this way, this is a question I should have asked you many months ago, but I'm glad to see you now. It's the first time I'm seeing you. What did you come in with your bag of tricks to carry out through your first 1,000 days?
Well, I come really with an extensive experience. I have been working now for 24 years, and I worked in the private sector for, I spent 23 years of my life in France and a few years in the United States of America, where I really had the chance to look at some models which work in the private sector. And also I spent quite a few years as an employee the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations.
Wow.
That's what I was doing before joining the government of Burundi. So what I'm really bringing is that experience, and now we are really in the process of, I would say, improving some of the processes in the East African community, which we think are not as good as we would like them to be.
We're talking about governance processes. So
about governance, now we are really trying to correct. You know, there were a number of audit reports which showed a few weaknesses in the areas of procurement or financial management, and we have been actually really fixing that. When I had handover with my predecessor, this was back in April 25th, 3-4 weeks later, we published our first reforms, and really they are about cost reduction, cost efficiency, and we are really monitoring the progress we make month after month, and I can tell you now that it is confirmed that we are spending less money than last year. And at the same time, we are really very keen on improving our procurement processes.
That comes in as a breath of fresh air, Ambassador, especially given that organizations such as those, you know, regional blocks or even international organizations, usually people look at them as bloated bureaucracies, which are more like abysses of spending money. And of course, we are not a block of rich countries. We are not the European Union. We are the East African community, a community of, you know, poor countries, but also struggling countries that are bedeviled with so much going on at home. And so that comes in the breath of fresh air. But you as Secretary General, I know you possibly may leave the other work to be done by the other respective agencies, I mean, legislation, the IALA is there, and all that. But then we have a situation in the East African community, a bit of instability, and security is always a very important thing to guarantee citizens if they must come together and integrate. Security and of course proper political dispensation. We have some challenges in Burundi where you come from. We have huge challenges in South Sudan, which is a new member of the East African community. We just had, you know, we have every other day repeated terror attacks coming from neighboring Kenya here, and all sorts of things. How are we confronting some of those challenges, and what do you intend to put on the table as a solution to pacify a region that would have great promise but is bedeviled by all this instability?
Well, I think you are talking really about one of the missions of the East African community. In our treaty, peace and security is really a very important matter. And that's why we have actually a political federation department. And we are trying to really get involved and bring solutions, get people together. These are not really very easy matters to resolve, but we are making a lot of progress. For Burundi, as you know, we have a mediator who's His Excellency President Museveni, who has also appointed a facilitator, former President of the Republic of Tanzania, President Mkapa. So we have been really supporting the process, and we are really trying to get Burundians work out their differences. It is, I mean, to us this is really very important. We want to make sure that down the road, a few years from now, democracy can be implemented properly in that country, in Burundi. Because as you know, the starting point last year was about the elections. But there is deeper than the elections. I know there are some other issues which need to be worked out.
And that needs to be sorted out.
Peace and security is really a big component. The East African community is putting a lot of resources. We are getting people in the department to make sure that we can really tackle some of these burning issues in the community.
Obviously, the other issue of the East African community that you've got to confront head on, obviously, is hinged on the very reason why you exist. Political federation. I mean, there is a lot of work that goes on to say that the political federation perhaps could have helped in pacifying or creating some kind of solutions to some of these problems we keep seeing happening in different places. In your view, if you look at the roadmap for political federation, when do you think we'll have a federated East African where we have one president and everybody else is under one government?
Well, what I can tell you is that the East African community actually is the only regional economic community in Africa which has in its treaty as an ultimate goal to form a political federation. So we are really, I mean, this is clear in our treaty. And in March of this year, I'm sure you probably remember about that, our heads of state asked the East African community to start actually drafting the constitution for a confederation. So we are really, I think, we are progressing very well. I cannot give you a date, but I think that a few years from now, this dream will become a reality.
Let me put it this way. I am closing on my 40th birthday. I just want to put it to you. The life expectancy of an average Ugandan is 48. I intend to live for double that. So do you think I will be lucky to see a federated East Africa in my lifetime?
Well, actually, I think I'm older than you. So I'm hoping that 5 to 10 years from now, we will have that federation.
Wow, that's
but our presidents are really committed to having that done as soon as possible.
Let's get down to the other bit of federation that you know, the East African community was generally formed for, and that's a monetary union. We, of course, are doing very well with regard to getting closer to a common market. That we'll discuss perhaps later. But what about a monetary union? Or should we start with a common market and then end up with a monetary union?
Well, I think we should start. You know, the East African community is actually acting around 4 main pillars of integration. The first one is customs union. The second one is the common market. The third one is monetary union, and the last one is political federation. And we have been acting in all, I mean, to actually achieve these 4 pillars. We are very much advanced in with the customs union. We are naturally now, as you know, we have now a harmonized tariff regime,
yes.
and we are now actually going towards a single customs territory, which will actually mean that any merchandise coming to the community, we have just one single entry point.
You sort out yourself there.
Yeah, the customs procedures are now being really they are
harmonized
being
and
connected, harmonized, and so this is really saving a lot of money to people who do business across the region, and it is also really it is reducing the time to move goods, and even for people. Crossing borders now is much easier than before. And I'm sure you know that the East African community has been very much involved in all these activities.
Sure.
We have now we have planned actually on building 15 border posts in the community, and now 13 have already been built and they are functional. So which means you can go in one single building, and when you go from Uganda to Kenya, and you will find the customs officers and immigration officers of the two countries in the same building. So these are things we are doing, and we are really proud to be able to say that now they are up and running and they're producing the results we have expected.
Wow, Ambassador Liberat, if I may also put it to you with regard to the synchronization of many other things that form part of the economic integration that we talk about. I mean, you worked as a chief executive in Burundi's water and electricity utility, and of course you've heard of talk of an East African power pool, where we have a common tariff regime across, so that we have energy, electricity flowing across all these countries more or less at the same tariff, and where we have our grid interconnected, just like it is with the South African development community. How are we progressing on that? And perhaps since you have the experience of running utility in Burundi, are you also at a very individual and perhaps personal level also putting in your weight as someone that has got experience in that kind of situation?
Well, if I may really be broader than that, what we are not trying to do at the EAC is rethinking our priorities. We are doing so many things. As I told you, we act in the area of customs, we act in the area of health, and so many things. Now we are trying to focus really on some areas which count and which respond to the basic needs of the EAC citizens. We know that most of our citizens are acting in the field of agriculture, for example. So we are trying to now very concretely to see what we can do for them in that area. Education is one area where we feel that we have to help university schools improve the quality of education, get didactic materials, and actually also have our region become a center of excellence for education. And for that purpose, we are really trying to learn from the best models. 2 weeks ago, I had Oxford University. We are getting into a partnership to make sure they can bring some of their programs to the Eastern African community.
Some of the select universities?
Absolutely. We have approached some universities like Stanford University in the United States of America.
Oh, really?
And these people are willing to come and transfer their knowledge and their technology to the community. Absolutely.
Not for us to go there.
Not for us to go there, to have our people stay in Uganda, in Kenya, and be trained where they are. At the same time, energy is really very important, because we have actually set industrialization as a priority, because we think that employment needs to be created. We have many young people and even elder people who are looking for jobs.
And we also need to add value to our agricultural product.
Absolutely.
If we must be competitive.
So for the industry, I mean, to add value to all, I mean, to improve the value chain in all these sectors such as agriculture, you need energy.
Without a doubt.
So, and we have had actually in all the community, we have had the same problems. We are not producing enough energy. And generally we don't produce it because, not because we are lacking the resources.
Yes.
The main resource for most of our countries is water.
Absolutely.
So we really have space for building many hydroelectric power plants, but we don't have the investment necessary to build these power plants. These are projects which require a lot of money.
Without a doubt.
So my experience really in that industry has been that you need, I mean, we have the sites for building the hydroelectric power plants located, so we know where they are. In most of our countries,
studies have been carried out for the most part.
In most of our countries we have feasibility studies, so now we need to find the money. So we have been actually, with my colleagues, we have been touring a number of countries. We are going to to look for investors where they are, rather than waiting for them or just putting
both
some,
where they are and have a
yeah.
conversation and negotiation
Yes.
on how to get the best form of financing.
So I mean,
concessional loans,
we have gone to Europe, we have gone to even Mauritius to see the people who are some of the investors and the banks which are there. And really the idea, we had actually Goldman Sachs here in Arusha a few weeks ago. And the idea is to bring people who have that money, who have that resources to invest in East Africa. To invest.
But you see, importantly for you to attract this kind of investment you're talking about, Ambassador Liberat, is to say that an investor like Goldman Sachs, he needs a certain level of stability and assurance of the stability of their investment. And that comes down to the political stability in the region. Sorry, I'm taking you back to where we started, but that's also going to be where we will close. And the question of South Sudan comes into mind. It's just, it always sticks out like a sore thumb. I mean, we have this world's youngest country, but world's most volatile country in terms of failing to, you know, have an amicable political solution to what their contestations are. And I thought that at this point in time, even as the African Union thinks of how to get in there and try to pacify the warring factions and bring them back together, the East African community ought to take some big and center stage.
Well, you know,
what are you doing?
I really would, I would ask you to be positive when you talk about East Africa. In most of the East African countries, there is peace.
True.
And when you look at, I spent, as I told you, you know, many of my years in Europe. I mean, democracy has been a long-time experience. I tell most of my friends that, you know, a country like France, which actually is supposed to have invented the human rights in 1789.
Why were we in 1789?
So 1789. So that's when the Republic started in France, and that's where they said, well, the human rights have to be instituted in our country. And yet women voted in France in 1945. And until today, there are some issues with, you know, with
the democratic dispensation and people's ability to.
And as you know, the US is also experiencing some issues. So it is not perfect. But our countries now are making a lot of progress. And that's what we have to look at. We have to look ahead. How do we improve what we have today? How do we consolidate peace in the countries which are peaceful? And I think Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania, you know, Rwanda. So we can see that many of the countries in East Africa are moving towards the right direction. So that's what we are really trying to. We are trying to help the process of improvement and of consolidation of peace. South Sudan has joined the community recently, as you know. And again, the principle for the East African community is solidarity. We know that some of the countries are experiencing, have issues, have problems, but we know that as a bigger bloc, we create more capacity for the region and for our people. We create more resistance towards other
antagonistic forces.
Absolutely. So the East African community will play a role, I think, I believe that will play a role in helping South Sudan economically and even politically. And the EAC is also helping all the countries. You know, when there are turmoils at every place, we are there.
Great. It couldn't have been a better note to end on such a positive note. Ambassador Liberat Mfumukeko, I hope now I got your name right.
Yes.
The Secretary General of the East African Community, obviously coming to us, you know, with this kind of positive message and a bright outlook. All we can say is that you have our utmost goodwill, and especially we here at NTV follow the developments that you will be carrying throughout your tenure and even going forward. And you can count on us as very efficient and able, but also importantly, willing partners in whatever journey and quest that you may have going forward. We can't have thanked you better for taking time off your very busy schedule to be with us this morning. I know it's a very early morning where you come from with time zone issues and all that, but glad that you made it here.
Well, thank you very much, and we need your support. We need the support of all EAC citizens because this is a great project.
Couldn't have come at a better time to ask for this kind of support, and what for sure is that you have it, count it done.
Thank you.
For you viewers, sorry, it's a pleasure having you watching this morning and following these conversations that we have on The Big Story. We're coming to a close of this particular program, but also close to a week long of conversations on The Big Story. We can only wish you a happy weekend, but also importantly, one that